Hi there. In this video, we're going to take our drawing from the last video and do this to it. We're going to color him inches, but along the way, we're going to use grouping, arranging, what isolation mode is, all sorts of fun stuff. Let's get started. Alright. Let's look at grouping, arranging. We're also gonna color them in. If that sounds simple, hang around because there are things like isolation mode that you really need to understand before moving on. Alright. So first up, let's turn off our trace layer. Okay, it was useful for getting us here, but we don't need it anymore. So, under your layers panel, let's just turn the eyeball off, or this little icon here, the first icon in the layers panel. We don't need it anymore. You can click on it and hit the trash can way down the bottom here, and that will just get rid of it. And I'm just gonna leave mine there. I'm gonna undo it. Just turn it off. So, let's first look at grouping and then isolation modes. So, I'm zooming in. I want to do a couple of things. I want to grab my pentagon, and I want to give it a black fill. So, I'm going to click on fill. Make it black. Preview, and I'm going to get the stroke and no color. We have a small problem. As they're now star, you can see if I use my black arrow, I can just hover above and eventually find my star by just clicking the little blue line that appears. It's there, but because it's black on black and it has no center, it can't be seen. So, let's have a look at fixing that. So, stroke. I don't want any stroke on it. And the fill, I would like this option here for white. Cool. So, I want to group these two. So, I need to select both. Sometimes you can't click both. I'm gonna zoom in just a little bit. Makes it a little easier to click individual items when they are close. So, I clicked on my pentagon. Okay. I'm gonna hold shift and click on my star. So, I've got them both selected. So, what I want to do is group them so that they kind of stick together. Okay. So, I can go up to object and go to this one that says group. There it is at the top. All that means now is if I click off in the background and I click back on just either one of them, they're both kinds of connected. It's not forever. Okay. I can go to select and go to ungroup, and that will separate them up again. But that's how to group them. Grouping is handy. One thing you will run into is something called isolation mode and get lost in Illustrator. This is where most people we know from lots of programs. You're gonna double click things, but if you double click in Illustrator, everything goes wrong. So, if I double click a star, double click. Okay. What happens is the background grays out and I can still work on these guys. But this gray bar here didn't appear before. Everything else that's not in that group is kind of blanked out. The people that I teach, quite a few then add double clickers. They love double clicking stuff. What happens is, I don't know. I can't work on the background anymore. All that's happened is you've entered something called isolation mode. And the way to really tell is at the top here. Can you see this thing? I'm gonna go back out of it by clicking this arrow twice. Okay. So, I'm back out of it. It'll appear up here. I'll move so it's easier to see. If I double click on this little bar appears and everything else that's not in that group is kind of blanked out. Why do we have it? It's mainly to confuse everybody that I'm teaching. But I want to kind of move them. Star to B. I don't know why. But you want it down there. It has really good use. It means that when I'm back out here, so I've got these things together. I want the star in a different position to the pentagon. So, instead of going to ungroup and then moving around and then regrouping them, what you can do is just double clicking them and think of it as going inside that group. We've kind of dived inside. Everything else is grayed out. It's not important. Now we're inside this group. Okay. Now, these guys are separate again. So, I can go. I want me, and what it means is, I can click this arrow to go back to layer 1 and then all the way out to exit isolation mode. Just keep smashing away at that little arrow until it goes away. And now, there's still a group. Okay, but you were able to dive inside and change it. So, I'm gonna dive inside again. Grab it. Stick it back roughly in the middle. Roughly enough. We're gonna stick both and arrange them. And again, you can keep clicking on the arrow to go back. Or double click the background. That kind of jumps you out like a bit of a quicker shortcut. So, if you ever get lost and think like a man, that thing's not working. It's not locked. And from inside of here, you can see a lot of these things don't work. These menu items, they're all grayed out. Because we're in this kind of special world isolation mode. Double click the background to come out. Everything will come back to normal. So, if you're lost, click the arrow or double click the background and you can come out. Hopefully, you can see the use of isolation mode. Let's look at another thing. So, I'm gonna and I'll click on this. Work on both little things here. We're gonna put the edges member of this foot. I'm gonna click fill. I'm gonna pick an orange. Just randomly from in here. And I'm gonna have a stroke of none. Foot. And I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna click this fella. This other I'm gonna make it slightly darker orange. Okay. And I'm going to have a stroke of none. Now, the trouble is that this one that I kind of want at the back is in front of my front foot. Just because I drew him last. Okay. But if you draw ends up on top of the last things. So, what I can do is I can select them. I can go to arrange. And I can go to send to back. And there you go. That's how to arrange things. And we're gonna do lots of arranging now. We're gonna get the layer order all right. You can use layers but in Illustrator, unlike something like Photoshop, you generally only have one layer that you work on. You can add more, but because these are all kinds of individual vector objects, Illustrator allows you just to kind of arrange them and bring them to the front. If you want this guy at the front now, I can click on arrange and say bring to the front. Arrange and send it back. One other useful thing to know before we go through and start coloring stuff is that, watch this. If I grab my penguin, I'm just grabbing all the penguin bits. Okay. So, I've just dragged a box instead of holding shift. Okay. And shift clicking it all. That would work. Okay. It'll be there for a long time. What you can do with your black arrow is just click, hold, and drag a box kind of roughly around. Can you see I haven't colored the feet? 'Cause I don't want that rectangle at the bottom, which is my ground. I'm gonna go just above there. And because I've overlapped those last little objects, it should select them all. That's one way of doing it. What I'd like you to do is, by default, I can't exactly remember whether it's on or off. I'm gonna show you both ways. So, what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna scale this down. So, I've got everything selected. I'm gonna hold my shift. So, it scales it proportionally. Grab the corner. I'm gonna scale it right down to my teeny tiny version of my penguin. Something weird happens. Right? All the stokes they don't scale down proportionally. Okay. That is still like a nice solid. Where is my eye in the middle? Remember we made him 4 points. He is still 4 points. So, I'm gonna undo it. So, here's gonna be times when you need that to scale down. Where you want these strokes just to remain the exact size you told them to do be. So, to do that let's click off into the background. But nothing selected. This is an option here, the scale, stroke and effects. Okay. So, with nothing selected you can turn it on and off. You'll be turned on and off recently. For me, I turn it on and off quite often. Okay. So, I cut it off. So, I'm going to undo. So when would you want to use this? Let's say that you're drawing something that's a bit more speak. You're a fashion designer and you need a stitch. Okay. That stitching detail to stay the same. Or say, you were drawing as this Illustrator gets used and this is another road. Okay. So, I want to scale it up and down, but I want to retain the thickness. I'm going to drag or roll this guy. I'm going to shrink them right down. To be a little mini penguin, You see, all the strokes came along for the ride. Other than to see a tiny penguin, I wanted to show you that little technique. Okay, before we move on, he's back to his regular size, and you need to resize it. But I've taught open planners by lots of different people. Say this is a road. Okay. Say these are not, these are roads. Okay. And I want to scale them up and down, but I want them to keep the same thickness to match everything else at some of my documents. But most of the time, have nothing selected. Just make sure it's on. That's I bet you probably 70% at the time. You just gonna need to leave it on. But no, that's where it is when you want to scale it down. You can turn it off and it will keep its stroke size. Alright, we're gonna work through and color this fella using our newfound grouping. Arranging techniques. I'm gonna click on the body. I'm gonna say my mind has got a fill of black and a stroke of white. Actually, now, I'm gonna click on the body and I want the body to have a fill of white. And nope, I want it to have a fill of black and I'd like to have it no stroke. Okay, so my alignment's working out fine except for my little flipper here. You can kind of see him. So, it's a little bit hard to find that flipper. I can kind of roll around and I might do him last because he kind of makes these a little bit harder to use. So, I'm gonna click on him. I'm gonna shift and then click on the eye because I wanna do the same thing. I want them both to have a white center and no stroke, please. Awesome. I eventually find them. And that's probably just perfect. Click on them. And I can say you, my friend, have a fill of black, a stroke of white, and I want to bring you to the front by going to arrange and say bring to front. Another way to do it, I'm gonna undo it. Okay, so I can't see it. Right, there was a kind of skeleton view you can use. It's called outline. If I go to view and go to this one that says outline. Okay, it's a common thing to use. Command plus Y, okay, or Ctrl plus Y, can you see? It's just like a wireframe version. So, you can do things like, actually, click on him because it is easier to see in this view. I can go to arrange, bring to front, then go to view. And so, you see Command plus Y toggles between GPU view, which is not a sexy way of calling it, but it just toggles outline to view, outline to view. So, I do that quite a bit if I lose something. If I'm like, millimeters, I'm pretty sure there was a flipper here somewhere. I can just go to Command plus Y on my Mac, or Ctrl Y on my PC, and just select them. I'm gonna grab you. I'm gonna give him a no stroke. I want you to be the same. You are going to have no stroke and a black fill, my little beak. I'm gonna grab you who are nicely grouped. My little sheriff's badge penguin. You'll notice, I should have selected all of these in one go, because they're all doing the same thing. I can do another little trick is, can you see this little eyedropper tool here? Okay, it says eyedropper tool. So, to make it work I have this selected. Okay, the outside of it, grab the eyedropper tool, and then click on the middle of my beak here, and it goes and steals the same settings. So, it changes the fill and the stroke to match it. It's a handy little advanced one. Alright, what I might do is I might grab this. Is gonna be a fill of some sort of gray thing here, and I'm gonna show you a few other color options. So gray, I'm not sure why it's gray. It's nice. I just want a monochromatic design. This edge of this for the water. What I'm gonna do is, say you've got these presets in here. Okay, these are pre-mixed. They're called swatches. Adobe has just said these are the ones. They're just some defaults. And they're good. But say you want your own custom color. See this little icon here? Color mixer. Okay. It gives the option down at the bottom for this thing here called the RGB spectrum. It's just a little rainbow colored thing. Click anywhere on it, and it's the tip of the little eyedropper will be the color. So, move it around. You can pick any old color you like. Pick any old color there. Common on. That's gonna work for me. Alright. A bit greener. And I'm gonna get rid of the stroke on these guys. I'm gonna go through and color all these holding shifts to grab them all. Here we go. We're gonna go fill with white. Now, remember, if you want to go back to the swatches, click on this first one. And I'm going to have a stroke. I'm going to put in a little bit of a background color because I want to see my white belly a little bit better. So, I'm going to put inches. You can change the background color. Okay. Do you know how it's white there, the page color? You can't just go and say set background color like you can on some programs. You have to draw a box. The way across, covering the whole thing. So, rectangle tool. I'll draw it all. I'm gonna give it a color of that light gray. There we go. And I'm gonna give it a stroke of none. And I'm gonna say arrange in the back, please. And that just means that you can see the belly of my little dude there. And if you're like me, I don't like his little potbelly now. I'm gonna click on him. Click on that guy once. To get the corner. And just drag him back down. So, he's got a nice square belly. Alright. My feet a little bit. So, you can kind of see that he's got feet at the side. Alright. So that's us for this video. We have created a little potbelly contender penguin. Now, remember, this is your first drawing. So don't worry if you're like this isn't good. And then I will see you in the next video where we start looking at something called the shape builder tool. Alright. I'll see you then.